you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the big show. For 16 years, 2,800 episodes, we're going to hit 3,000 folks here in another month or two. Episodes of the Chris Voss Show. We bring you the most brilliant minds, the greatest stories, the wonderful journeys, the lessons of life, everything you could possibly imagine. Or if you just want to entertain yourself with some wonderful novels, we have it on the Chris Voss Show in the hundreds per category. I refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives, or else I'll haunt you at night in your nightmares. Go to Goodreads.com / Chris Voss. He's threatening his audience. Go to Facebook.com, YouTube.com, LinkedIn.com / Chris Voss. You can find me all over the place there. Today we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his book called Drownproof, 8 Life Lessons to Keep Your Head Above Water, out April 14th, 2026. Andy Stumpf joins us on the show today. Welcome to the show, Andy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm worried, though. I was listening to your intro. I don't meet any of the criteria of the type of people that you have on the show. I'm not a CEO. I'm definitely not a thought leader. I'm not revolutionizing anything. So, yeah, I mean, we could just wrap it up if you want. I mean, I can't meet the criteria.
Thanks for coming by, everyone, and be sure to order. So, Andy, give us the .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
All the socials and versions of my name. The most active on Instagram, Andy Stumpf 212. Twitter, I think, is astumpf77. And all of this is because somebody stole Andy Stumpf before I got on there, so I had to create versions of it. And then AndyStumpf.com is going to land you at kind of just everything that I have my fingers in.
Yeah. Just call up the person and who has that .com and just be like, I'm a Navy SEAL and I make people disappear sometimes.
That's what I used to do. And I'll be honest, I wish it was that cool. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'd give it to you. I'd be like, buy that man a beer. Because I've read a lot of books and we've had a lot of people on the show that have come from the SEAL background and our military background, of course. So give us a 30,000 overview, if you would, please, of Drownproof.
Oh, where to begin? The best place to begin is how much fun of the authors I have made from my previous community and how many times I told them I would never write a book and that I was disgusted with them, which I wasn't actually disgusted with them because most of them are my friends. I'm just giving them, a good-natured hard time. The reason that I didn't think I could ever write a book is that, at least in my opinion, I served with people who were absolute legends. I look at my own career, I would value it as a C if you're looking at an academic standard. And I was just surrounded by people who were A+, maybe not in every area, but they could exceed my ability. Maybe not the same person, but this guy's better at me than this, and this guy at this, and this guy at this. And so what do I have to offer? And also, the real military experiences that I had in the global war on terror was nothing to really write home about, no pun intended, but never these national level missions that people have necessarily heard of. It wasn't making headlines. It was just down the center of the road, which was still important, and I'm very proud of it. But how do I, you know what I mean? And I'm watching all these other people who are recognizable inside of the community for these things. And the idea was presented to me, and it was more from, instead of trying to tell those type of stories, because so many people look at the SEAL community as if the experiences are unavailable to everybody else. And the reality is, statistically, almost nobody will make it into the community, but that's just because such a small percentage of people actually apply, and then a small percentage of those people actually make it through training. But the more I was thinking about it, the lessons that I learned, the mistakes that I made, probably more than anything, which is largely what the book is about, are the mistakes that I've made and the things that I learned from them in that community have shaped the rest of my life. And the longer I've been out of the military, I've realized that all of those lessons have applicability in the civilian world, whether the person is able to experience them through their firsthand POV like I was able to. And the book is my best attempt to try to take those experiences, those lessons learned, the mistakes that I made, and give people an architecture and a framework that they can go solve whatever problems or challenges life is presenting to them. Because I can't solve anybody else's problems, but hopefully I can give you some tools that'll make a difference in your life.
Damn, I came on here with a list of my problems for you to solve. And
I'll give you a place where you can pre-order the book. And
I like that. I like that. He steps right into it. You know, we've had a lot of great military people on the show. We've had people that are Navy captains, that are from the SEAL community background, from the Air Force, you name it, all over the place. I think we've had some leadership people that teach at, what's the big military college?
There's a couple. West Point, Naval Academy.
Yeah. And, you know, our military teaches an amazing amalgamation, because I guess each branch has its own different version a little bit, but it's all kind of around about the same, of leadership, of character building. It's extraordinary. And I really didn't realize how big or important it was until I saw what used to be deemed as the second best military in the world, the Russian military. And we found out they're the second best military in Ukraine.
Yeah, and by a large margin too.
Yeah, and you see the difference in leadership. Like, I really started seeing the structures of how our leadership is and there. And we should do. I mean, I don't know why military people are not hired directly out of the military as soon as they leave and put into leadership positions, because they have that innately with the way our training is, so that they you know, if their command is cut off, they can operate as a unit and function in of themselves. And that's you know, in Russia, with the Russians, you cut off the head, you know, the downline is lost.
And I think some of that is tied to how and why people are serving in the Russian military. I think a lot of the times they're being voluntold versus volunteering. You know, in the U.S. military, yes, I would say leadership in all the services. The services are defined by their similarities, not by their differences. There might be a different vernacular that they use, but I would agree that many of the core nucleus of the messages are the same. They put their own color on it depending on what branch that they come from. There's a difference when you establish that NCO corps, that non-commissioned officer corps that is the gap between people who are first joining and then senior leadership. Without that NCO corps, which is people who are in the military, I'll say 6 to 10 years, you really can't function without them, because that's how the sausage is made. Those are the wheels that are turning, that are getting things done in the military. And I'll tell you this, I would say anybody in the military who has experience is probably going to have a better understanding of leadership. But I would actually caution civilian organizations hiring people for leadership roles just because they were in the military. Leadership is a very soft skill, and it takes time. And I was in for 17 years. I've been out for 13 now. Leadership outside of the military is more difficult than it is inside of the military. Your people are contractually obligated. They've gone to a variety of crucibles, depending on what program they've come through. They've bought in on the mission. You know, you get issued your flag instead of buying it. You're there for the right reasons. So you can be a little bit more heavy-handed and a little bit more directive at times. And that actually falls flat in the civilian world. Definitely give veterans the benefit of the doubt, but hire them because they're qualified, not just because they came from service, because leadership is like anything else. It's a tool. It requires practice. And not everybody views it from that perspective or gets many laps in the saddle of that practice.
Or discipline, for that matter, and character building. I mean, if anything, there's a discipline in the military, and it serves a purpose. You know, I remember seeing a thing with the Marines where they were talking about, I can't remember what it was, but it was something that had to do with the badges that they wore, their awards or recognition of rank, I guess, that they have, and there's a reason that they're posted at a certain 0.1 of an inch of something or other, And it just has to do with that preciseness of, if you fuck around, you find out. So you got to be disciplined and and all that.
Attention to detail. I know what you're talking about. Everything on the uniform is a quarter of an inch apart, and your shoes have to be on a certain way, and your laces have to be left over right or right over left. And people on the outside will look at that and say, that is so ridiculous. And it actually has nothing to do with the quarter of an inch on the uniform or the shoelaces. It's that how you do anything is how you do everything. And discipline in the real world execution of the military role, which is to fight and win wars, could be the difference between life and death. So you're teaching a lesson, a concept through an act that isn't directly or associated directly with where you need the expression of that to be. But yeah, people like, why the military? Why is it the way that it is? If you looked very deeply into what the job is, you got to kind of follow instructions and directions from time to time.
And you got people's lives on the line. So, you mess around, people can die, and catastrophes can happen. So you wrote this book. We've got 8 of these life lessons. What's one of your favorites, or one you like to talk about? And that is in the 8 there.
They're all good, and they're all tied together. But if I had to, not necessarily tied together, I would say they work well together. If the total system was a wheel, each of them are a spoke. The wheel can go on without all of them, but I tried to do it in a way where they all kind of made sense and you could use them in combination as opposed to just isolation. Probably the most impactful tool that I didn't realize I had been taught at a very young age, but was reinforced substantially, indirectly and directly while I was in the military, was the idea of breaking your goals down into digestible pieces. And this isn't revelatory by any stretch. And there are so many conversations that I had when I went back as a SEAL candidate instructor. The basic pipeline is called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. I went back as an instructor, and we talked really deeply about, should we be reinforcing this lesson to the students before they show up here? Would it be a difference? Would it actually help them make it through training? And the reality is, you can understand a concept. Living that reality and knowing the reality are two very different things. It doesn't make anything easier. It makes things more digestible. And what I realized when I went back as a SEAL instructor is that it is the world's best laboratory on why people fail. In winter months, 15% of a class will graduate. So almost 9 out of 10 people that will raise their hand and tell you, this is what I've wanted to do my entire life. This is the only goal I have in my life. There's nothing that you can do that will make me quit, and I will be here on graduation day. 9 out of 10 of those people will not be there. So to me, I mean, you want to talk about a laboratory of just a graveyard of dreams. They actually, it's so wild, because when they quit, they ring a bell, which is symbolic. There's actually
I was going to say the bell.
Yeah. But after that, they take their helmet off and they put it down next to the bell. So for every class, there's the first helmet down, but then there will be a row of sometimes 150 helmets.
Wow.
And I started looking at those as tombstones. Those are just tombstones of people's lifelong dreams.
Dream dying. Wow.
Yeah. And so as an instructor, I got to spend time with the students who had just made that decision to quit. And I was very kind with them. There's no need to do anything other than be empathetic and supporting of somebody who's just made that decision that they likely will regret for the rest of their life. But I was curious as to why so many people quit, because it is my theory, if you can determine why the vast majority of people quit, you should be able to reverse engineer that upstream and figure out how you can kind of bulletproof or drownproof your mind, right? Depending on the word you want to use.
Drownproof.
Yeah. They all almost exclusively told me exactly the same thing. And this is hundreds of students, maybe thousands. I didn't use the same words. They didn't say it was exactly because of this, but what they all described to me were versions of this. I didn't think I could be fill in the blank for long enough. Meaning, I didn't think I could be that cold for any longer, or for as long as you were going to ask me to. And I was like, dude, I didn't ask you to do it any longer. I didn't tell you how long you were going to have to be cold. You did this to yourself. I couldn't be that tired. I couldn't be that hungry. I couldn't be that far behind for whatever it is. What they're describing is being overwhelmed. And what I mean by that is they are viewing where they are, and the only thing that they are looking at is the distance between where they are and where their goal is. So they have this huge optic on time or distance. And the bigger that optic is and the bigger that distance is, the more likely they are to quit if that's all they can think about. Oh. The people that are able to get past those moments are the ones that don't care how far away they are from their goal. They focus on the next step that they need to take. So they chunk their goal down into a digestible step, and all they focus on is the next step that they have to take. And there's so many ways you can do this. Like Hell Week was the fifth week of training when I went through BUDS. Starts on a Sunday, it ends on a Friday. You get about 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday. And the best advice I was given, though, is don't pay attention to what day it is. Don't pay attention to if the sun is up or the sun is down. Just make it to your next meal. And I remember asking the guy who told me, I'm like, why does that matter? He's like, dude, they have to feed you every 6 hours, which I didn't know. I'm like, oh, that's actually really attainable, as opposed to trying to figure out how many hours are left, 136, 135, while you are the coldest you've ever been in your life. So that concept of chunking and how to do that and how to break things down into those moments and how to focus on that moment almost to the exclusion of everything else, whether it's your frustration, your anger, your fatigue, whatever it is. That is the difference between students who graduate and those that put their helmets down. And as far as an impactful tool, the most impactful tool in my life from the book, that one's it. That has gotten me through the most difficult things in my life, to include buds, even though that was not the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's also helped me in how I achieve goals that I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get there. I just need to focus on maintaining my momentum and not paying attention to how far away I am from it. Because as soon as you get frustrated and overwhelmed, man, the bad decision matrix is starting to creep in on you.
Do you kind of feel like you turn emotional at that point, and you lose kind of the logic perspective? So sometimes you make some bad decisions in emotionality.
Yeah, I am not aware of a single way that emotions benefit decision making. You know, it does. If you're scared or excited, right? Two polar opposite emotions. Neither of those, if they involve themselves in your decision making process, actually make things better. But I believe it could have an unlimited downside. And because when people get scared, and I've seen this in my own self, you really start making bad decisions, and you can actually make things worse by emotionally allowing your decision-making process to continue. And so part of that is an awareness of yourself and realizing that you are starting to get emotional. And how can you work your way through that? You take a little bit of a step back, you know, not like physically, depending on what's going on, but just look at the situation that you're in, take a deep breath, and figure out that next step you need to take, and keep doing that regardless of how you feel.
You know, I've read a lot of books from military folks like yourself, and about SEAL training and the stuff that goes into it. Yeah, and I always wondered, you know, who the people were that rang the bell. And I just always kind of figured, you know, they just made whatever the reasons, they don't have the gumption. But, you know, I've used that technique in my life, in business and stuff, you know, sometimes, and I'm a procrastinator. I'm an ADHD procrastinator. If I can find something else to do, which I usually can, be an ADHD oriented.
For sure. It's kind of your jam.
You know, yeah, it's my jam. It's a CEO disease. I mean, it'll make you a lot of money, but it'll cost you a lot of money too. So you gotta, it's a constant battle. And, but I call it eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Yep. Or a whale. And I've heard both versions.
Or a whale. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, whale's probably, I don't know which is tastier or which is chewable.
I'm going to go whale, probably.
Whale?
I think so.
I might switch from elephants to whale then. I think I might change my diet. But
you know what's interesting about the students who quit? Sorry, not to interrupt you. It's not about the gumption, actually. A lot of the times, they're just not ready. They might know the lesson, they might know the technique, but they're not at a place in their life where they can execute it. Because again, you can understand this chunking technique. And if I take you and tell you you're going to be awake for 5 days and you're going to be hypothermic nearly the whole time and running around with boats on your head and telephone poles and more chafe than you've ever been with sand, that concept, you'll tell yourself day one, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chunk this. It's going to make it easy. And about the end of day one, you're like, oh my God, this is not easy. I'm trying to focus on just the next step. And this is the most painful thing ever. So knowing the path and walking the path are two different things. This is a tool that takes reps. What a lot of people don't talk about is you can come back to buds if you quit. As long as you don't leave for a reason that would be, it's usually administrative in nature. It's going to be like an alcohol-related incident, or if you get in trouble with the law out in town. If you just quit, if your command will let you come back in a couple of years, you can absolutely come back. And the students who come back a second time have a much better pass-through rate than the ones who were there the first time. And I think it's probably because they have a little bit more life experience, a little bit more wisdom, probably more reps practicing that concept of chunking.
Because it's probably more, in going through SEAL training, which is it more of, would you say, a mental game or a physical game?
The only muscle that matters in buds is the one between your ears. Now, having said that, it is physically challenging, right? It's kind of cliche to say that, but the reality is the brain is what controls the meat suit that we're all walking around in. But if you show up, so day one of training at buds doesn't occur in a vacuum. You don't just like teleport and you show up there. You join the military, you raise your hand and say, hey, I want to go to this training program. So you take a very, very basic physical test and aptitude test. Then you get pipelined into the program. There are more people that want to go to the program than there are slots available. And this has gone on and off, so I don't know where it's at currently, but there's a pre-training program where you're practicing the physical evolutions. You're taking the testing standards to the best of their ability to replicate them. And then you're competing for your slot in the program. Then you check into the program and you have to wait for your entire class to get there from all over the Navy. And that whole time you're being trained by instructors, you're doing the test gates. And my point in all this is you have to do a lot to get there on your first day. And I personally believe if you can physically arrive at your first day in training, you physiologically possess what it takes to graduate. But that's not the muscle that fails. Now, yes, some people do get hurt, and then I'll carve that out as a second category.
Oh, yeah.
But so the injury rate I was astounded by when I went back as an instructor. I didn't realize it was as high as it was.
Right.
But the vast majority of people make the decision to quit, which is a failure to control yourself and your mind.
Yeah. We've had people on that have coached the Olympics, and a lot of them talk about, the visualizing in your mind what's going to happen. So if you're going to the Super Bowl, you think about each play, you think about how you're going to react, how your body's going to feel. Because one of the problems people have, like with the Super Bowl, especially if they've never been in it before, is they kind of get that anxiety and that overwhelm. This is what they waited for their whole life, right? As football players.
Yeah, they're amped up before they even get into the game.
And they're amped up, and then that throws them off because, sometimes those chemicals and emotions, but if you're like Tom Brady, you're just like, it's the Super Bowl.
Autonomous robot, potentially emotionless.
Alien. No, he's a good guy. But I used to hate him because I'm a Raiders fan, and he stole that one Super Bowl from us with the tuck rule.
I mean, here's the thing. He can't argue the man can perform.
Yeah. I mean, once that Falcons game where he came back against every single odd, I think it was, wasn't the Falcons? That was when I went, okay.
Yeah. And how about where he was drafted, right? The last guy, what do they call that guy? I forget there's a name for the guy who's drafted last every year. Nobody probably would have thought that he would have had 2 hands full of Super Bowl rings when that happened.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy, man. Now, you talk about how people understand how people are in control of their destiny. We see that a lot of people today. Victimization competition seems to be huge. But how can I get in control of my destiny when my girlfriend always wants to go to Target every day?
It depends on what she wants to go to Target for, because sometimes there's good snacks there, right? So you got to determine if this is like a snack mission or she's getting Tupperware. Definitely.
Did she pay you off? Did she slip you some money?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Suffering, to a degree, has almost become a competitive sport. And I get it. I mean, I think people are looking for this path for an easy life. I haven't found it yet. And I've actually worked my way to a place that I'm not actually looking for. Nothing that I value in my life came to me easily. And the reality is this: you can't control what happens to you in your life, but you have 100% control over how you respond to it. And one of the things I talk about in the book as well, it's another one of the tools. And I do this every year. You just get a piece of paper out and you draw a line down the center. And on one side, the left-hand side, usually I'll put concern, or you can put whatever worries, whatever you would want to. And on the other side, I put influence, or you could put control. Things that you, on the right-hand category, you can only put something in that category that you personally can physically actually control. So the left-hand category, when I first did this, I was a little shocked. I'm like, okay, this is almost everything in my life. I am worried about everything. How much money am I going to make? Am I going to be successful? What do people think about me? Should I do this? Should I do that? And then I started scratching my head. I'm like, okay, what can I put on the right-hand side? And to this day, there's only one thing that I can put down there, and that is myself. So that is at least an eye-opener for people to realize or ask themselves, where am I dedicating most of my time? Because that's what shocked me. I was doing high 90th percentile of my time on the concern side of the house, which I actually have zero direct control over. Now, anything that happens that I'm concerned with, I might have to react to, but I am in control of how I can react. I can control my thoughts. Yes. Do they get away from me at times? Sure. Can I recognize that and work my way back? Yes. Do I get angry, frustrated, all the emotions? Yes. And I've worked as I get closer to 50 than 40 to being able to catch those earlier and work on those things. But those are the only things I can control, not what happens. So the girlfriend who always wants to go to Target, your mechanism of control there is you say either yes, or you say no, right? You get to control the environment, but that is it. You also can't control whether or not she wants to. Like, why does she have to go to Target? Why do you want to do this? Oh man, that's a roundabout to hell right there.
And she'll be able to control leaving me for someone else. So.
Dude, that's a fear that I have as well. But okay, if you actually, and for people out there who think that, okay, what would stop somebody from doing that? How about you take control over what you do have, which is everything in your actual sphere of influence? You're going to go to the gym. You're going to work on your diet. You're going to rest. You're going to be the absolute best expression of a human being that you can be. And guess what? She's not going to want to leave you.
Yeah. And that my darkest plan is to eventually buy Target and bankrupt and shut it down. So that anyway, no, I'm just
I could be an early adopter in that plan. My wife spends a lot of time at the old Target.
I know. I've got guys who got wives that go twice a day. I don't know what they're doing.
That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Yeah. That's a psychopathy.
Yeah, there should be a book on that. Anyway, so now you mentioned, how you react to different things is really important. A lot of the military folks we have on the book Meditations with Marcus Aurelius is kind of their Bible. Have you found any sort of alignment with Stoicism in the book?
I mean, I think it's great. I think there's broad applicability inside of the military or out. I think the reason a lot of people in the military probably gravitate towards that is it's in a lot of the curriculums inside of the military, because again, he was talking about military service and stoicism during that time and being a leader. And again, you could read some of those things, like, I'm never going to be who Marcus Aurelius was. It's okay, we'll take that out of the equation. He's not talking about that. You could, imagine if, regardless, Target, you check people out at Target and you're dealing with different personalities all day long. And some people are fired up to be there and some people are really pissed at you for existing as their person who's there, checking them out. Stoicism is going to help you in both of those situations. I mean, it's just so wildly applicable. And again, because of the close parallels to the military, I think that's why it's so aligned with a lot of military people, but great lessons.
Yeah. How to, controlling your emotions. We had one of the astronauts on from Apollo 13, and the title of the book was Don't Panic Early or Never Panic Early. It was one of those two. And basically it talked about what you mentioned, as soon as you panic, as soon as you lose control of your logic and reason, you're screwed and you'll make bad decisions. And that's what they taught him in NASA. And, they would run him through thousands of these fails that would go on and they would train them. And, he even said that the movie, the only time his heart rate ever really got up, or they were a little concerned, was when they were coming in to the atmosphere and they were starting to get a little too hot. And that was the whole time where my heart kind of went, might not be pulling this one off. But the rest of the time, they just stays through it. They stayed on topic, and he espoused that idea, like you said. Once you start letting emotions slip in, you start making bad decisions, and then they compound, and then people's lives are on the line too. Sometimes your own, maybe.
And the Apollo 13 astronauts are amazing. I feel like they had to just walk to the space capsule with a wheelbarrow with their testicles in it, because you want to talk. You know what I mean? Like, where do you keep that in the capsule? Is there a secondary capsule for that? But those people, their ability to do that, they're not autonomous robots, and that's important for people to understand. Controlling your emotions is very different than trying to remove yourself from them or not have. I think our emotions are some of the things that make human beings what we are, that are unique, and we can feel and communicate the way that we do. I mean, I think empathy is one of the most important emotions that you can have. So it's not a matter of trying to be emotionless. It's a really important point. It's a matter of, over time, working with yourself. Like for me, I can tell, like, my face gets flush, not red, but I'll feel like there's heat in my face anytime I start to get frustrated or angry. And I recognize that because I let it go too far before and started working my way backwards. And after action review, like, how did this happen? This was a train wreck. Can we go upstream and try to figure this out? And it's sometimes for people, it's the pace in which they talk, or they start fidgeting, or these are all cues that you got to work with yourself. I mean, nobody can do this work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to do it yourself. One thing I wanted to run by you, I've had, in our business world, we used to look at things of whether or not we can put up with the worst case scenario. We'd call it looking the dragon or looking the tiger in the mouth. And when we make really big decisions with our companies, we would sit down and be like, what's the worst case scenario and can we live with it? and we're going to spend 20 grand doing this one thing, and hopefully this piece of hardware we're buying is going to create profits and better systems. And we found that really worked for us, because once we found we could live with the worst case scenario, we're like, oh, maybe it's not going to be so bad then. And you talk about that in your book. Tell us a little bit about that, the value of planning.
Yeah, planning specifically, like best case scenario, is amazing. But most of the time in our normal 72-hour planning process, I would say 8/10 of that is spent on contingencies, which is what you're talking about. We would look at things like the most likely course of action from our enemy, but then the most deadly course of action, not for them, but for us. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You're looking your dragon in the face. And this is how you know that you're spending the requisite amount of time, especially given what it is that you may be doing or what you're risking. You can analyze and assess risk, and then you can array things against them. Is there a piece of equipment we could use, a different type of helicopter? Could we drive instead of fly to reduce risk from anti-aircraft fire? So what's the worst thing that could happen? Is there a way we can mitigate it? Then look at what that risk remains, and then you have to make your decision off of that. You can either tolerate it or you cannot. And in the military, depending on the residual risk, that's where you have to go to for different levels of authority. Like low risk, you're probably going to be able to do it locally. Medium to high risk, you might be going all the way up to the White House at the most extreme levels of risk. And then they're looking at the dragon, right? And a lot of that, though, success in those environments comes from contingency planning. The best time to make decisions and figure out what you're going to do is before the emergency presents itself. If you could, in a perfect world, like the best way to be a combat leader, if you could, and this isn't possible, but if you could strive for this, it would be amazing, is that if everything presented itself to you, it would go down to a branch diagram because you've already thought about it. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to do this, because that just frees up bandwidth, right? You've already answered the question. You know what you're going to do. And that's all front end work that doesn't make any of the movies. I've yet to see a movie about the SEAL community where for 3 days straight they stare at Microsoft PowerPoint and argue with each other about what font you're going to use. And I know why, because that movie would suck.
It would suck.
It would.
Maybe if you put some really good music to it, I don't know.
It sets this expectation, though. If you don't openly talk about that, people think that doesn't happen. But for a normal operation overseas, if you have the time, you will take 72 hours and dissect every single phase to analyze, assess, and mitigate risk. And then it's all what ifs. What are we going to do? What if we lose our radios? What are we going to do? How many people can we have get injured before we have to stop this and call for a medevac? What if the weather comes in? And that is what allows you to be fluid and maneuver on the battlefield, because you've thought through all the contingencies.
Yeah. One of the great examples, I'm sure that you probably have a million in your history, but one of the things that always stuck out to me was when we killed bin Laden, they planned for everything, Pakistan scrambling jets because their airspace had been violated, making the target aware of, that there, something was about to go down.
Yeah.
So they planned for all that. And the other thing they plan for is being prepared for everything. So one of the helicopters is called a hard landing, I think it is, or it malfunctioned.
That was a crash. Yeah, that was a crash.
Yeah, that was a crash. Okay.
It's called an uncontrolled, unintended landing.
I do that with my life sometimes.
Gravity is real.
Yeah, gravity. That damn gravity gets it every time, especially when you get older. But and so they knew what to do when it happened to destroy the helicopter, so that it couldn't, the technology couldn't fall into bad hands and whatever. But, I read what happened and I was like, were they there for 4 hours? What the fuck? Like the amount of time that they got like all this shit done, even with the contingency of having to get another helicopter back up, deal with that helicopter and destroy it. And, women and children, they even got like hard drives and everything. And I'm just like, what, were they camping out there for a day or two? But you look at I can't remember what the exact time is that they pulled all that off.
But I think just 40 minutes.
Yeah. Just crazy. I can sit here and look at my computer and 40 minutes go by.
It's wild. And I'm friends with a bunch of guys that were there, and you ask them about that. Yeah. And you ask them about that and they're like, it was no factor. It didn't change. Literally. But because you practice that stuff. What if a helicopter you're getting ready to launch to begin with, and all of a sudden one of the helicopters has a mechanical? Do we still have enough people? Do we need to shuffle people over? You figure all that stuff out before. So once they got there, it's just a tactical problem. So yeah, they were supposed to fast rope. I mean, I guess it saved them a little bit of time there. No risk to your ankle for falling off the rope, potential risk to life for being in a helicopter crash. But at the end of the day, once they got their feet on the ground, they didn't really care. I mean, I don't think they would volunteer to go for that ride again, but it didn't change anything that happened on target.
Yeah. So planning for the worst case scenario, I mean, that's what our military does. That's why we see you guys do all the drills and the practice and stuff, because practice makes perfect. And then when you're in those scenarios, I've had Air Force pilots on the show talk about, some of the split decisions they have to make in the military, and I'm sure you did too, where you've got to make sometimes complex life and death decisions for yourself or for, other members of the team or even civilians. And you have to be able to make that logical conclusions and calculations in milliseconds sometimes, and then be comfortable with that decision.
Yeah. A lot of people will say practice makes perfect. I would add to that, perfect practice makes perfect. If you're just going to practice and not hold yourself to the standard that you're trying to achieve, an argument could be made that you're wasting your time a little bit. So you need to practice smartly. It's not always about time on the range. It's about, what time you are spending on the range and how you are training it. And hyper-realistic training helps in those situations. I mean, the training we did was extremely difficult. People would get injured sometimes. It replicated the environment that we were going into, and it's layered over decades for a lot of guys, or at a minimum multiple years. And it helps you make those decisions, because by the time you are presented with those situations, it really is, it's like information presents itself, fall back on your training. I mean, it's a snapshot. It's a very rote decision-making process, but that all is because of the work that you put in on the front end. You can't just throw somebody into that environment and expect them to perform.
Yeah, definitely. Anything more you want to talk about on the book or future stuff maybe you're working on, future books, speaking, events, things like that?
People, first off, since my answer was I was never going to write the first book, how do I even answer? When people say, hey, you're going to write another one? I'm going to say, no. And they'll be like, liar, we know. We'll wait for it.
No.
So here's what I'll say. I don't know. I don't know what I would write about. Right. It wasn't really my idea to write this book. And truly, it's interesting. I'm very new to this process. I had no experience and exposure to it. The book comes out in April 14th. So all the, the leading up to it, talking about this is all very new to me. And I know that people are in the literary space, there's some marquee things that they're aiming for, right? Like New York Times bestseller list, USA Today list, Amazon list. And although I can appreciate those things, I mean, truly at the end of the day, I just would like to have an impact on the world in a positive perspective. I would like to leave this place a fraction of percentage better than it was when I came in. I did enough damage on my own. So I don't care if I hit any of those. If people can find their way to the book, again, I can't solve anybody's problems for them, but I can talk to them about my mistakes and what I learned from that, and hopefully give them another tool on their tool belt. And that's where the idea of Drownproof comes from, right? Because before you can thrive, you have to be able to survive first. You got to be able to keep your head above water before you can even talk about thriving in any environment. And to me, the water is the least forgiving. I mean, it's wild to me how little people respect water, and it will take your life like that.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I hope that it has impact. I hope that it means something to people. And I put my best foot forward to try to take those experiences that people have told me my whole life. Oh man, it must be so cool. Or I can't believe you got to do that and nobody else gets to. It's the experiences. And if I lived my life and never did anything with that, it would have only had an impact on my life. I feel obligated to try to take those experiences and use them in a way that it can have impact on other people's. That's the goal with the book. If people want to find me, just go to andystumpf.com. I do a good amount of public speaking, but all that stuff is there. I host a podcast called the Cleared Hot Podcast. And again, that's just the best repository for me is the website. Because it's just, again, it's all the little tentacles of stuff that I've accidentally, stumbled my way into over the years.
There you go. It's like we say on the show, stories are the fabric of our lives. And without them, we're pretty much nothing. And, we don't get owner's manuals. So we share stories with each other. We entertain, we teach. It's the greatest way to learn. Many times, someone like you has a blueprint where you've gone through some cathartic moment or some crisis. You survived it. You figure out a way to get through it. And so you're sharing your blueprints with other people. And so people will see that and they'll resonate it. And I mean, you'll literally change and save lives, I'm sure. I've got it loaded up on my audiobook pre-sale. So I'm going
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, isn't it wild that we got a few iterations of human beings at this point from like generationally, no instruction manual whatsoever.
I'm still waiting for mine in the mail.
I mean, a toaster, I bet you in the toaster's second iteration, it came with a piece of paper that said, don't put a fork in this.
Don't put a fork in this. Don't bathe with the toaster.
Yeah, that's within 3 generations maximum. And we're like, depending on beliefs or how many generations we're at, we got nothing. We're like, do your best.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even come with the warning label. I think some of us should come with maybe me should come with a warning label.
Everybody needs a warning level. Trust me. You're not unique in that.
Don't let this near plastic and it might asphyxiate itself.
Yeah.
Just like your dry cleaning. Maybe don't rip the tags off this, something like that, like a mattress. Yeah. Andy, it's been wonderful to have you on. Delightful. Thank you for your service and thank you for sharing your lessons of life so that people can learn these things. I mean, you had a most unique experience being in the top percentage of people that get qualified and stay in this program and serve our country and serve our Constitution. So we certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much, Andy.
Definitely my pleasure. Like 98% of it was awesome. So that was my pleasure part. The other 2% sucked, but whatever. It's part of the job.
Sometimes that's how you get here,
That's like, the way it goes, man. Cost of entry.
As an entrepreneur, they're like, oh, it's so great what you did. You're like, my back hurts. My knees don't work anymore. I can't.
And you're missing the 10 other ventures that didn't get me to this place. Yeah. The 10-year overnight success.
Yeah. But I don't know where I'd be without it. So there you go. Thanks, Andy, for coming in. Order up his book, Drownproof, 8 Life Lessons to Keep Your Head Above Water. You can pre-order it now for April 14th, 2026. I can't believe we're almost halfway through the year.
I know.
Wow. Thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
All right, Andy, great show. This will be up in